It's not a complete overview of all the different components and services in Azure like Omid did for AWS. It's going to be quite a short one. I took the latest releases and announcements made by Microsoft in the Azure cloud in the last couple of weeks related to data, the data platform. And I'm going to cover those. And while I'm doing that, I'll try to explain a little bit about each one of the technologies and components I will be talking about. If you have any questions during the session, feel free to raise your hand. Just one answer to Omid's questions. Yes, everything that you showed in your session is available in Azure. Different names, different flavors. For each and every component, you have a counterpart in Azure, more or less. So we have Azure HD Insight, which is a cluster of Hadoop or Kafka or whatever. We have Databricks. We have Spark. We have R. You have Power BI for the presentation layer, and so on and so on. Lots of those. I'm not going to cover them here. And we have a book. I gave one already. We have another one. So I'll find a reason to give it to someone. OK. I think I have 5 or 6 of those. First one, just from last Friday, Microsoft announced this one 3 days ago. We can now use read scale out support for in Azure SQL Database. OK, so how many people here use Azure SQL Database? Quite a few. OK. Azure SQL Database is a platform as a service, a database as a service, just like RDS in Amazon, meaning you don't need to manage the infrastructure, the operating system, or even the SQL Server instance. You just get a database. Very easy to provision a new database and start working with it. You get a connection string and work with your database. It comes with all kinds of flavor. There are 2 licensing models. One is called DTA. You pay for database throughput units. And there are several tiers. You have basic, standard, and premium tier. And there is also vCores. You can pay for specific hardware for your Azure SQL database. And then there is a general purpose and the business critical. This feature gives you the ability to do some load balancing. So if you have an application that does read and write operations, it goes to your database. Okay? But Microsoft also has some duplicates for redundancy, for maintaining their SLA. Microsoft commits for some SLA for your Azure SQL database. In order to achieve that, they have replication behind the scenes. They replicate the database to several other nodes. Okay? You don't have access to those secondaries, but now you do. You can't control which one, but you can say this application intends to do read and write operations. It will go to my primary database. This application, my reporting, my BI application, only intends to do read operations, and then it will route the traffic to one of the secondaries behind the scenes, okay? Which will reduce the load from your primary. And you get this free of charge. You don't need to pay for this service, but it's only offered in the premium data tier or the business critical. So yes, you pay for it, but if you use it anyway, then you can use this feature. So it's quite nice. I took this from Microsoft. So again, you have primary replica. This is always how it works. Okay? Behind the scenes, Microsoft maintains 3 other secondaries. Okay? When you use the premium tier, it's made behind the scenes by using availability groups, actually. So you have 3 other replicas. Again, you don't have access to it. It happens behind the scenes for maintaining the SLA. And when you use the application, in the connection string of your application, you can add application intent. And then you can specify application intent either read-write or read-only. If you specify read-write, which is the default, it goes only to the primary replica. But if you specify read-only, it will now go to one of the secondaries. Okay? You can't control which one. You can't do any load balancing. You can just have this option to route the read-only traffic to another secondary, which is a great feature. Okay, so this is from now. Any questions? Yes.
Like just wondering, like if I do read-only and then try to do write, will it fail? Like, is it guaranteed to fail in this case? Or
if you put read-only in the connection string and then you try to write something, as soon as you try to write something, it will go to the primary. It will not fail. Okay. And also, if you of course specify read-write and you do just reads, it will go to the primary. Okay. But if you say read-only, and you actually do read-only, it will go to another secondaries. Okay. More questions? All right. This was number 1. Number 2, again from last week or the 2 weeks, Azure Backup. Azure Backup is a service, serverless, no infrastructure, to perform backups in Azure. Until now, we could perform backups of virtual machines. Okay? If you have several virtual machines in Azure and you need to back up those machines, this is a very easy way to do it. Okay? You don't have to write any scripts, maintain any hardware, write any code or anything like that. You have a service, very easy to use, very easy to provision, and to manage different schedules, to manage retention. I want to back up this and that machines every day, every hour, every whatever. Keep it for 1 year. Everything is very simple. You can do it using the user interface. You can use it a REST API or PowerShell to do that. Now, you can do the same for SQL Server. So if you have a SQL Server on a virtual machine, we can back up SQL Server, full backups, differential backups, transactional backups, using this service. Again, all the things I mentioned for virtual machines, we now get them for SQL Server. So you can see it. First of all, zero infrastructure. Okay. Again, I don't need to maintain anything. It's a service in Azure, a cloud service, very easy to use. You have long-term retention. I don't remember if there is a limit, but you can maintain backups for years. Okay, so there's practically no limit, and you pay just for the storage, which is really cheap, relatively. The minimum you can run backups is 15 minutes. So if you need to run log backups like every 5 minutes, it's not good for you. But for many, many cases, 15 minutes or more than that is good enough. Okay, so you can choose the frequency of your backups. There is auto protection feature, meaning if you have a consolidated server with many, many databases, and you add more and more databases all the time, each time you add a new database, you need to put it into the backup service. Okay? By using auto protection, you don't need to do it. You can just set a checkbox and say, whenever you identify a new database, put it into the same backup policy that I've already defined. Of course, point-in-time restores. As soon as you take your backups, including log backups, you can easily, using the service, using the UI, I want to restore this database to 2 days ago or 15 minutes ago, very easily. It will do it for you. And if you have lots and lots of servers to manage, then this is the big advantage of this service. You can very easily manage all your servers from a single location, very easy UI. Again, don't need to run PowerShell scripts to run backups and move things around. Everything is handled in a single, easy way to use. Okay, so this is Azure Backup for SQL Server. When you provision it, it installs a workload backup extension on each one of your virtual machines running SQL Server, okay, which manages the backup itself and routes the traffic, the streams, the backup data. Okay, and of course, everything is maintained using Azure Vault. Okay, so everything is secured, encrypted, and you have access using the Vault to the backup, which is actually in the storage. All right? Questions? There's a short video I want to show you just to get a feel of how easy it is to use.
Hello everyone. In this video, we'll learn how to backup SQL servers running in Azure VMs using Azure Backup. Azure Backup is the modern way to backup in the cloud. Built into Azure, it is a zero infrastructure solution that eliminates the need to deploy any backup infrastructure. Unlike traditional backup software that need you to manage backup servers, agents, and provision storage, it protects both standalone SQL Server instances and always-on availability group in Azure VMs and provide the key capability to manage them centrally, so you don't have to log into each server or node in isolation. Along with a bunch of other features like 15-minute RPO and point-in-time restores, it provides a very simple experience to configure backups. Just log into the portal, discover the databases, and apply the backup policy to them. Let's see the demo now. Log into the Azure portal and go to the desired recovery services Vault dashboard. A vault is a storage management entity to which all the resources are backed up. To configure backup on a new database, click on Plus Backup and specify your intent to backup SQL Server in Azure VM. This will launch a two-step process. In the first step, select the SQL VMs and discover databases in them. This typically takes a few minutes and will register the selected virtual machines to the vault. In the second step, click on Configure Backup to see the list of all the SQL Server virtual machines that are registered to this vault. This list shows both standalone SQL Server instances and SQL always-on availability groups. Expand the chevron on the left to see all the unprotected databases in that instance. You can either select the few databases that you want to protect or select the entire instance, or better still, enable auto protection. The auto protection feature ensures that the solution automatically detects and protects any new databases that will get added to this instance in the future. This is especially beneficial when you're working in a dynamic environment where databases get added day in, day out. Next, specify the backup policy. Choose from the list of the existing policies or create a new one. You can specify the backup frequency and retention for each of the 3 backup types: full, differential, and log. For example, I can choose to have weekly or daily fulls and retain them for as many days, weeks, months, and even years to meet long-term retention needs. I can specify the backup frequency to as low as 15 minutes for my log backups to meet low RPO requirements. You can also enable native SQL compression for your backups. Click OK and then click Enable Backup. This will trigger multiple configure protection jobs corresponding to each of the databases that you protected. These jobs can be monitored in the Backup Jobs plate of the Vault dashboard. Once these jobs get completed, you will see the backup items corresponding to the databases that you protected in the Backup Items plate. To restore a database, right-click on the corresponding backup item and click on the action Restore DB. Next, choose the Restore destination. You can either restore the database to the same server and overwrite the existing one, or to another SQL server registered to this vault. Next, specify the recovery point you want to restore. You can either restore from discrete recovery points created using full and differential backups, or you can recover from continuous log backups represented in the form of a graph. For example, if I want to restore the database to its state at 6:05 a.m., I'll simply choose that time in the graph. The solution automatically locates the right combination of full and differential backups and applies the logs based on the selected time. So you get the database exactly how it was at point in time. So that's it. Just click on Restore and you are done. You can track the corresponding restore job under Backup Jobs. Thank you.
All right. Any questions? So this was Backup for SQL Server. Next feature, again from 2 weeks ago, Microsoft announced a partnership with Timescale. Yeah, here again, sorry. With Timescale, which is a time series database based on Postgres. Okay, so let's put things in order. Postgres is a relational database, open source database, available in many platforms. For example, Omid managed Redshift. Redshift is based on Postgres. We have Postgres in Azure as a database as a service. So we have Azure Database for Postgres, for example. Of course, you can always use a VM and run Postgres on it. And now, Timescale DB is a time series database. It's actually a set of libraries for Postgres to manage time series data inside Postgres database. And now there is a partnership with Microsoft. So inside Azure Database for Postgres, you can install Timescale DB and run time series applications. I'm not too familiar with it myself, okay, so I can't tell you too much. But I found this just as an example, an interesting graph. This graph shows you the orange one is Timescale DB. I think it's blue. The blue one is Postgres without Timescale DB. Okay, so this application uses just Postgres by itself, inserting data. This is the size of the tables in millions. So this is 2 billion rows, 4 billion rows, and so on. And this is the rate of insertion, millions of rows per second going into the table based on the size of the table. So this is what happens when the table becomes larger and larger using Postgres. And by using the library of Timescale DB, you get this predictable performance even though the table becomes very, very large. So it really shows the difference. I actually don't know, I'm not too familiar with Postgres again, I don't know why the size of the table influences so much the rate of the inserts. Okay? Maybe someone here knows, but you really can tell the difference. Michael?
Postgres treats deletes and updates different from other relational databases. It doesn't delete, it just marks it as deleted. And if you don't run process that's named vacuum, probably you're familiar with it from Redshift.
Yeah.
It's a pain in the same place.
Okay. But this is the rate of inserts.
Just, if you don't know about it, if you don't treat it properly with vacuum, you can arrive to a situation when you have 90% junk in your table, and vacuum scans the table, so sometimes you just can't run vacuum at a scale, and you're in problem. Timescale, though, although it's timescale databases, and Timescale DB is just add-on to Postgres, it's capable of the usage of it is like for time series data, like stock quotes or user actions on a time scale. It has a nice feature like time to live. You don't have to merge data from it. So you can mark like you need 3 months of user activity. It's automatically.
You insert a row and you say when you want to be deleted
we have
automatically.
A customer that uses it. Tried Postgres with timescale. 10 times faster.
Like this? Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Any questions? All right. So the next one also relates to Postgres. There is now Postgres extension in both Azure Data Studio and Visual Studio Code. Anyone using here Azure Data Studio? Thank you. So Azure Data Studio is the, not so new, but still the new Microsoft client tool, open source, closed platform for managing and developing against different type of data platforms. Okay, so of course it supports SQL Server, but it supports many other data platforms as well, in the cloud, on-prem, on Windows, Linux, and Mac, and so on. And now there is also support for Postgres. So there is an extension for Postgres. You can use this visualization tool, the UI tool, to manage Postgres database and to work against Postgres database. To do things like, usually people who use Postgres are use command line. And now you can do things like this, split database into folders and manage the folders and go and see all the database objects and manage each one of them and so on and so on. Okay, so this is just a snapshot of Azure Data Tools. You can do the same with Visual Studio Code. Okay, so Azure Data Studio is more for administrators, for managing database, data platforms, and Visual Studio Code is more for developers, for developing. But you can do a lot of things with both tools. Okay, so choose your own flavor. So this is if you want to use Postgres. Okay, you use those, Michael, with your client? Excellent.
Not with this client. I use this. And
you use it, okay.
There's another new feature, the notebook in this. So
right. I think no, it's not here.
With graphs, with Postgres, SQL.
True. Okay, we now move to the Azure SQL Data Warehouse, which is more or less like Redshift in Amazon. This is a data warehouse as a service in Azure, based on SQL Server behind the scenes, but it's an MPP database. You can run a cluster. You can choose how many nodes you want to have in the cluster. And you can load lots of data into the data warehouse. It's columnar. It's compressed. And you get, depending, of course, on your workload and what you want to do, very good performance. We have something called workload categories in Azure SQL Data Warehouse. So this is an example of code. What we used to have for each member, for each user running against the data warehouse, we could define the workload group. There are several workload groups, meaning how many resources I will get for my query. And then I could do some resource governance or load balancing between different processes. I have one process, for example, my ETL process, okay, which needs some resources to load data. and I have some users analyzing data, querying the data warehouse, and maybe other reports. Okay, so different use cases, I want to give each one of those users or processors a different set of resources. This is something I could do before. What we have now, a new capability, is also the importance. Okay, so we have normal, above normal, below normal, and so on. And we can define the importance. So even if I have less resources, doesn't matter how many resources I have, if we have now 2 sessions running, one of them is more important, I want it to happen first, I can give it above normal importance, it will always run first, as you can see in this animation. Okay, so even if I'm the last in the queue, because I have a higher importance, I will go to the beginning of the queue, and I will run first before others. Okay, so it gives all kinds of resource governance use cases when we have many different users. Okay, and this is the syntax for how to run it. This is new in Azure SQL Data Warehouse. And the last one, it might sound to you like a small thing, but I know a lot of clients and have problems with that. This time we talk about the Azure SQL Database managed instance. Okay, so a managed instance is actually a SQL Server instance as a service. It's not only a database, it's a complete instance, which I can manage myself, but it's also not a virtual machine, something in between. I don't manage the operating system, I don't care about the operating system, but now I have a complete SQL Server instance I can manage, including master, temp DB, everything inside the instance, the SQL Server agent service, for example, and so on and so on. Okay, so this is managed instance in Azure. Generally speaking, managed instance, one of the proposals for Microsoft introducing this service is for people to easily migrate or upload their data center, the SQL Server on-prem instances, into the cloud, because it's very compatible with an on-prem instance. It's quite easy to take an on-prem SQL Server instance, upload it to the cloud as a managed instance, and keep all the settings, configuration, my databases, everything the same. But there are some specific issues. Okay, one of them is the collision. So up until now, all managed instances in Azure only use the default Latin collation. Okay, no support for other collations. I cannot specify a collation for the managed instance. And this, I know from some clients, this is a showstopper for migrating to the cloud, because I need a different collation on-prem. Now I need to somehow change my application to work with it, or I just can't use it. Okay, so it becomes a showstopper. Now you can choose your collation. Okay, so every managed instance now can have its own collation. Again, sounds like a small thing. I know for some clients this becomes a very big thing, because now they can move to the cloud. Okay, this is a JSON that says I have collation here. Okay, just as an example. You can use this with PowerShell. Okay, I think it's not supported in the UI yet, but when you provision a new managed instance using PowerShell, and you have a JSON for the settings, now you can specify the collation as well. It is in the portal? Okay, so it is supported in the portal, in the UI. Thank you, Ronen. And that's it. Any questions?
למה שלא נתמך בפורטל בצורה של קליק אנד פליי, אפשר לעבוד עם טמפלטים, ואז בעצם אפשר להעלות את ה-JSON.
Resource Manager.
לא, בפורטל אתה יכול להריץ טמפלט. את הטמפלט עצמו אתה יכול לערוך. זאת אומרת, אם יש משהו, זה לא מקביל לפאורשל שיש עוד אופציות, אבל הרבה מהאופציות שאין לנו בפורטל, נגיד קליק אנד פליי, זאת אומרת, אין כפתור, אתה יכול פשוט להעלות את הטמפלט שכולל את הפרופרטיז שאתה רוצה.
Okay, so I just translate. Ronen said in the portal, in the Azure portal, everything you can do with the UI. You can actually generate a template for it, edit the template, and then do whatever you need. Okay, so even if it's not supported in the UI itself, if it's in the template, you can still use it. Any questions? So again, just a couple of things for the last couple of weeks. One thing that is common to all cloud platforms, whether it's Amazon or Azure or Google or anyone else, is the pace. Very, very fast. Okay? On a daily basis, we hear of new features, new announcements, new releases, new components, completely new components or services in the cloud. It's impossible to keep up. Okay? I'm trying, but it's impossible, really. Don't even try. But it's good to get to know the main things that are relevant to you, the interesting things, or specific things that you are interested in. Depending on the platform, in this specific case, I'm talking about Azure. Microsoft has a blog that announces every new feature. You can subscribe to it. Don't try to read it all. You also have a newsletter. So once a month, you get all the new features, the new announcements and releases in the past month. And there's a wealth of documentation on the web. Same for Amazon, of course. There's a lot of information you can find on each and every one of the different cloud services. And just maybe a last sentence. The big thing, I think, about cloud in general is to use the cloud services, the platform services, okay? Because by moving my servers to virtual machines, we don't get much. But if I need now to build a new architecture, it's very easy to take this service and that service, connect them together, and provision a new system from scratch in sometimes days or even hours instead of months or sometimes years. And it gets better and better all the time with features like I showed you here. Okay, so every day or week we hear about new things. That's it. I need to give this book to someone. Who needs to put something on it?
Thank you.
All yours. Any questions? Anything? Thank you very much.